She raised her hand, his lip still bleeding, and slapped him with hatred. "That's for being human." He only smiled, turning slightly. "Then you'll love my next trick." Harlan, 2387. A desolate planet with 2 scorching suns and a unique system of crystal canyons. The city of Crystal Canyon sat nestled between rust-colored rock crevices, home to the sacred Crystal Heart, a revered energy crystal. The Zeli Ara Society, tall, blue-skinned humanoids who valued rituals, crystal weapons, and tribal identity, had once been oppressed by the Earth colonial empire and now strictly protected their territory. Their height, scarification markings, and piercing fire-colored eyes distinguished them from the humans they so despised. Ver, to his colleagues, was a human scout standing 1.8 meters tall, with short brown hair and gray eyes. Earth Colonial Center had sent him to Harlan to assess peace possibilities. Calm, intelligent, and skilled in guerrilla tactics from experience on desert planets. His initial objective was to gather data for diplomatic proposals. Kesha to her clan, was an elite warrior of the Hunt tribe. Nearly 2 meters tall with deep blue skin and fiery pink eyes, her body adorned with majestic scarification. She always carried a crystal spear that demonstrated her power and rank. She hated humans and believed any human infiltrating Harlan deserved death. Her goal: protect the Crystal Heart and maintain tribal honor. Torval served as war chief of the Zeli Ara Federation, a stern figure over 3 meters tall with deep battle scarifications. He believed in collective strength, but could be flexible when necessary. Kishai, an elderly member of the Council of Elders, possessed a cold, impartial voice despite his frail 500-year-old body. He represented the Crimson Hunt tribe and presided over Ver's interrogation. Various tribal leaders from major clans like Morax, Kaldor, and Zythe held their own perspectives, whether conservative or supportive of change. Meanwhile, rebel warriors known as deserters, led by Krathmore, posed a direct threat to Harlan. Ver appeared at the entrance to the canyon, leading up to the city, just as his final communication with Earth Center was interrupted. The atmosphere grew tense as Zeli Ara civilians panicked over rumors of human infiltration, believing they must teach a lesson to maintain face. The story unfolded primarily through Ver's viewpoint, occasionally revealing Kesha's inner thoughts. The tone balanced tension and heroism with philosophy, describing burning desert imagery, cold crystal architecture, and the scarred bodies of the Zeli Ara. While Ver surveyed the Whispering Caves, his communication device to Earth Center malfunctioned. At that moment, a Zeli Ara apprentice from the Hunt tribe reported that the Watara city, the Crystal Heart, had been provoked. Human claw marks appeared around the sacred structure. Kesha first encountered Ver at the edge of a bioluminescent precipice, waiting to capture him. She slapped Ver savagely, drawing blood from his lip, coldly saying, "That's for being human." The main conflicts emerged: humans versus Zeli Ara society, Ver versus Kesha, and Ver's internal struggle to control his anger, avoid being killed while bound, and observe his environment for survival opportunities. Ver's objectives shifted from scout to prisoner, forcing him to find ways to survive and prove his worth. Kesha changed from capturing humans for torture to using humans as leverage before the council, challenging conservative thinking. A crack in Kesha's crystal spear symbolized the crack in Zeli Ara beliefs and legends, suggesting past unhealed wounds. Rumors about Krathmore gathering rebels in the east foreshadowed a greater impending danger. Ver was pinned to the rock wall below the council, watching through a small window as Kesha walked around like a camp master. He suppressed feelings of contempt, struggling between fierce resistance or pretending to be docile to survive. He used his imprisonment to memorize the city layout, observe Zeli Ara guard schedules, and discover vulnerabilities in the surveillance system, foundations for later use. Kesha forced Ver to explain his purpose. Ver calmly answered that his goal was peace, not invasion. Kesha mocked. Peace. Your kind only knows how to kill each other. The council, led by Elder Keshai, continuously questioned, implying humans are deceitful. Torval's role emerged from the shadows, observing without intervention. News arrived of an attack. A rebel group, deserters, from the east, assaulted the outer fortress, intending to strike directly at the Crystal Sanctuary. The Zeli Ara had to deploy troops to protect it, revealing a vulnerability in Ver's guard. Kesha decided to offer Ver an opportunity. If you help defend the city, we'll reconsider your fate. Ver agreed and received a pulse rifle, a foreign weapon to the Zeli Ara. He quickly learned to use it, demonstrating agility and sharp thinking. He proposed ambush tactics along the canyon, exploiting cave terrain to attack enemies from two directions. Kesha hesitated, but had no choice. She and Ver led a small band of warriors to the battlefield to intercept the enemy. The crystal heart shimmered with blue-white light, illuminating the entire rock gorge, symbolizing the Zeli Ara spirit. Energy bullet streaks tore through the night darkness, contrasting with the murmuring shadows of the caves, creating a vivid life and death drama. The narrative quickened, detailing each movement, the hiss of bullets, Ver's rapidly beating heart. Strong verbs, shoot, launch, charge, trigger, created urgency and intensity. 12 rebel warriors attacked the right canyon, moving professionally, but not anticipating guerrilla tactics. Ver and Kesha coordinated perfectly. Kesha attacked at close range with her crystal spear. Ver provided long-range support. They quickly eliminated the opposition, protecting the crystal heart. At a critical moment, a rebel tried to use an explosive beam to destroy the heart. Ver threw himself forward to prevent it, rolling and swinging his gun to shoot down the attacker before the energy ball could destroy the crystal. The Zeli Ara troops applauded, though some figures remained wary. A human is too involved. Kesha brought Ver back to the council as a hero, paving the way for the notion that humans could be allies. Elder Keshai remarked, "The strange invader has saved us, but should we make him an ally?" Kesha's internal conflict intensified between tribal pride, "I should have caught him myself," and admiration for Ver's reaction abilities. Torval intervened, proposing to test Ver in a temporary peace phase, allowing him supervised freedom to prove his strategic value. News spread about Krathmore, the rebel leader gathering thousands of warriors in the east. A scene showed worried Morak soldiers reading reports. "We're not strong enough to oppose Krathmore." A timeline emerged. In 72 hours, he will concentrate forces near the Great Canyon. Ver struggled between camaraderie with Zeli Ara and loyalty to Earth Colonial Center. Conservative Zeli Ara feared humans would lead to loss of sovereignty, believing Ver was merely bait that would later trap the Zeli Ara people. After the battle, all city signals temporarily ceased, lights dimming, symbolizing the temporary pain of Zeli Ara. Ver picked up a few spent energy casings, silently touching them, symbolizing battle scars on both sides' souls. The night before confrontation, thousands of rebel warriors, deserters, from many tribes gathered under Krathmore's banner. A procession marched by night, campfires glowing red, war drums echoing, creating a sense of overwhelming power. Torval convened a tribal grand council. Each clan expected to claim glory, but tensions ran high due to mutual distrust. Kesha stood beside Ver to protect the idea of cooperation. Ver presented his dispersal tactics, harassment protocol, proposing to use the cave network to establish tiny battlefields spread over hundreds of kilometers to harass each other, forcing rebels to disperse their forces. His analysis of strengths and weaknesses. Zeli Ara excelled at hunting, cliff climbing, small group coordination. Rebels were strong in numbers but weakly connected. A major tribal leader objected. "We are hunters, not guerrilla fighters. We must engage in large-scale combat to prove our strength." Torval asserted, "Old strategies will only bring disaster. Today, if we don't trust Ver, we'll lose our entire tribe." Kesha demonstrated loyalty to Ver, directly confronting the rigid tribe. The council atmosphere reached peak tension. An elite strike team, led by Ver and Kesha, consisting of 6 elite members, secretly infiltrated through the Whispering Caves system, a route considered legendary for its treachery. The tense cliff climbing scene showed Ver struggling with oxygen-thin air and sharp rocks cutting into his hands. Kesha provided support, but nearly slipped herself. Each climbing step was detailed, along with falling rock fragments and labored breathing. The rebels never expected an intrusion from the perilous cave passage. They had set up thick guard teams and modern sensor systems, Ver signaled, and Kesha fired an energy beam to turn off most sensors for 10 seconds, allowing the team to slip into darkness. Ver sniped the gate guard. Kesha subdued other guards with her crystal spear. Crathmore, nearly 3.5 meters tall, gray-textured skin, fire eyes, appeared with several bodyguards, a blood-chilling moment. Ver stood at a distance, observing the gap, waiting for Kesha's signal. "Raise the gun!" He fired a fatal energy shot into Crathmore's shoulder. The rebel leader collapsed, exploding in flames, blue blood spraying onto the rock wall. The conflict ended as Crathmore staggered, losing all discipline, rebel soldiers' morale collapsing. Ver's smile while shooting hinted at human killer instinct, but his eyes showed empathy, knowing he would not let Crathmore destroy an entire race. As crystal fragments bled back into Crathmore's heart, it created an image of the Zeli Aura's supernatural power. The rebel forces lost their leader, Crathmore captured, killed, and panicked in retreat. Many tribes disbanded on their own, some surrendered. Ver and Kesha withdrew to the council chamber with Crathmore as prisoner, immediately influencing military and political dynamics. Ver evolved from just doing his duty to becoming the gate guardian of Harlan's glory, feeling they were no longer outsiders. He experienced a pivotal moment, realizing he could not only save Zeli Aura lives, but play a larger role in the future. Kesha looked at Ver with admiration. Her belief that all humans deserve death had shattered. Yet, she remained cautious, reminding Ver, trust still has a price. The council convened an emergency meeting. Some members proposed eliminating Ver immediately because he is human, a potential enemy. Torval argued, Ver saved our lives. He deserves the title of strategic advisor. Kesha added, one final test remains. Can we truly trust humans? Finally, the council agreed to name Ver an honorary resident, on the condition that he continue to serve in the next battle. Ver questioned himself. Should I follow Zeli Aura customs and sacrifice my own ideals? Kesha persuaded him. We're not asking you to abandon humanity. Just become a bridge to help our peoples understand each other better. Through this scene, they officially became blood brothers, symbolizing unity beyond hatred. The light ceremony at the council. Peaceful blue light from the crystal heart flowed through the glass gate. Kesha's crystal spear fragment was gifted to Ver, symbolizing trust given. The crack on the spear, now resembling a mark of friendship. 6 months after the war, Harlan rebuilt, tribes united into the Zeli Aura Tribal Federation, opening doors to trade with Earth Colonial Center. Ver became the supreme strategic advisor to the Federation Council, living at a shared base with Kesha, participating in drafting bilateral treaties. Many tribes remained wary, but gradually accepted humans as allies. The first humans, directly guided by Ver, came to Harlan to exchange culture and science, establishing the Crystal Heart Garden as a meeting place for both species. Ver grew from strange outsider to connection symbol, developing altruism and responsibility between the two races. Kesha evolved from rigid warrior to peace ambassador, recognizing that difference is strength rather than a source of hatred. The themes fully illuminated: cooperation and respecting differences, as two races learn to listen, exchange, and enrich each other's cultures. Courage and selfless sacrifice as Ver risked himself to save Kesha. Kesha sacrificed old beliefs to open up to Ver. Collective maturity as the Zeli Ara human alliance became proof of the saying, "No one wins alone." A two-colored flag, blue and reddish-brown, fluttered atop the citadel, symbolizing the Federation. A crystal spear fragment glowed under the twin moons, Harlan's two moons, illustrating the parallel world between the two species. When Ver and Kesha looked at the crack in the crystal spear, Ver smiled and remarked, "You thought I only had one final trick, but actually, I have many more." Kesha smiled mysteriously, suggesting resonance for a potential sequel, that the connection between the two races had only just begun. The moral lesson emerged. It is in the cracks that we find connection points. Two different races, when united, multiplied their strength exponentially. The emotional impact moved from initial amazement through peak tension to bursting hope, making readers reflect on how we view others. The final message crystallized. Only by overcoming prejudice can we discover the true strength that comes from diversity. Crystal Canyon seemed to breathe in rhythm with the twin moons of Harlan. The desert night cloaked the massive crystalline structures in a soft blue glow, reflecting off the polished surfaces of the city's architecture. Ver stood on the high observation platform, his human silhouette stark against the alien landscape. 6 months had transformed him from prisoner to advisor, from enemy to ally, from outsider to bridge builder. Still mapping escape routes, Kesha's voice came from behind him, her tall blue form moving with silent grace despite her imposing height. Ver smiled without turning. "Old habits, though I'd call them strategic exit options now." She joined him at the railing, her crystal spear, now mended but still bearing the distinctive crack, catching moonlight as she shifted it to her other hand. "The delegation from Earth arrives tomorrow." Nervous. "Should I be?" Ver glanced at her, noticing how the scarification patterns on her arms seemed less threatening now that he understood their meaning. Each a story of valor, of lessons learned, of battles won not just through strength, but wisdom. "They're your people," Kesha said, her pink eyes scanning the horizon where one moon was just rising above the crystal formations. "But you've changed. You're not entirely theirs anymore." Ver considered this. "And not entirely yours either." "No," she agreed. "You've become something in between. Like this." She held up the crystal shard he'd given her months ago, a piece of Earth technology fused with Harlan crystal. Neither purely one nor the other, but something new. Something that could exist only through the union of both worlds. Below them, Crystal Canyon hummed with evening activity. The Zeli Ara moved through their city with purpose, their tall forms navigating streets once forbidden to outsiders. Here and there, the occasional human figure could be seen. Researchers, diplomats, the first tentative exchanges between worlds long separated by mistrust. "When I slapped you that day," Kesha said suddenly, "I truly meant to kill you afterward." Ver touched his lip reflexively, remembering the sting, the taste of blood. "I know. What made you smile when I told you it was for being human?" Ver turned to face her fully. "Because in that moment, I realized something profound about you, about all Zeli Ara." "What?" "That your hatred wasn't personal. It wasn't about me at all. It was about what I represented. And anything that exists only as a symbol can be changed." Kesha's expression softened, the fierce lines of her face arranging themselves into what Ver had learned was thoughtfulness. "And your next trick? Was that planned? Or were you simply being defiant?" Ver laughed. "Completely improvised. I had no idea I'd end up saving your sacred crystal, becoming a military advisor, or stopping Krathmore. I just knew I needed to seem confident." "Ah," Kesha nodded. "A warrior's bluff. We have similar traditions." The larger moon had fully risen now, bathing the canyon in silver blue light that complemented the soft glow emanating from the crystal heart at the city's center. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: Earth representatives, political complexities, the delicate dance of two species learning to trust. But tonight, in this moment, there was only the shared silence of two former enemies who had discovered something more valuable than victory: understanding. "They'll ask me if they can trust you," Ver said finally. "The Earth delegation—" "And what will you tell them?" Ver fingered the crystal fragment hanging from his neck, the piece of Kesha's spear she had gifted him. "I'll tell them that trust isn't something you earn once and keep forever. It's something you build, day by day, choice by choice." He paused, looking out over the city they had both nearly died to protect. "Just like we did." Kesha's hand, larger than his, with fingers tapering to points that could tear through armor, came to rest beside his on the railing. Not touching, but close. A gap intentionally preserved. A space that acknowledged their differences while celebrating their proximity. "Then, I believe," she said, "we are ready for your next trick." The morning brought three suns, Harlan's twin stars, cresting the horizon simultaneously. Their combined heat already shimmering the air above the crystal spires. Ver adjusted the environmental controls on his uniform, grateful for Earth technology that made survival on this harsh planet possible. The delegation would be arriving within the hour, and tension hung in the council chambers like a physical presence. Torval, imposing as ever, with battle scars creating topographic maps across his blue skin, paced the length of the crystal table. "They must understand that we negotiate as equals. The days of Earth colonial dominance are finished." Ver nodded. "They know. That's why they're coming to us instead of demanding we come to them." Kishai, the ancient elder, whose fragile appearance belied his razor-sharp mind, tapped his gnarled fingers against the table's surface. "Words are ephemeral. Actions endure. We will judge these humans by what they do, not what they say." The assembly of tribal leaders murmured agreement. Despite the months of preparation, centuries of distrust could not be erased overnight. Ver understood their caution. It mirrored Earth's own. Both sides had valid reasons for suspicion. Both had witnessed betrayal. Kesha entered the chamber, her ceremonial armor gleaming, spear in hand. As chief security officer for the negotiations, she had spent weeks preparing, analyzing potential threats, both external and internal. Some factions on both sides preferred conflict to cooperation. "The landing zone is secured," she announced. "Honor guards from all major tribes are in position." Ver caught her eye across the room. The subtle nod she gave him carried volumes of unspoken communication. They had planned for every contingency they could imagine. The rest would require adaptation, something they had both proven adept at. Torval raised his massive hands for silence. "Today marks a new chapter in our history. For generations, we have defined ourselves in opposition to humans, as victims, as resistors, as survivors of their expansion. Today, we begin the work of defining ourselves as partners." A low murmur rippled through the gathered leaders. Not quite dissent, but not wholehearted agreement either. Change never came easily, especially to a society built around tradition and ritual as firm as the crystal beneath their feet. "Ver," Torval continued, "you will lead the reception party. As one who has walked in both worlds, you are uniquely positioned to facilitate this first formal meeting." Ver inclined his head in acknowledgement, feeling the weight of responsibility settle across his shoulders. His original mission, to scout Harlan for potential diplomatic contact, had evolved beyond anything Earth Center could have anticipated. He had become not just an observer, but a participant. Not just a reporter, but a creator of new possibilities. "It is time," Kishai announced, his ancient voice carrying surprising strength. "Let us go to meet these humans with open eyes and ready spirits." The procession wound its way through Crystal Canyon's central thoroughfare, a deliberate display of Zeli Ara culture and strength. Citizens lined the route, their expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion to hopeful anticipation. Children, their blue skin lighter than adults, pointed at Ver with undisguised fascination. He had become something of a local legend, the human who fought for Harlan, who stood against Krathmore when others thought resistance futile. At the landing zone, a broad platform carved from native crystal and reinforced with earth alloys. The honor guards formed a precise formation. Each tribe had sent their finest warriors, adorned in traditional regalia that told stories of their lineage and accomplishments through intricate patterns of scarification and ornament. Ver took his position at the front of the greeting party, Kesha slightly behind him to his right, Torval and Kishai flanking them. The sky darkened briefly as the Earthship descended through Harlan's thin atmosphere, its engines precisely calibrated to minimize disturbance to the crystal structures below. "Impressive," Kesha murmured. "Your people build solid vessels." "They'll be more impressed by what you've built here," Ver replied. "A society that survived despite everything thrown against it." The ship settled on its landing struts with barely a sound, a courtesy Ver had specifically requested. No show of force, no dramatic displays of technology. This was to be a meeting of equals. The landing ramp extended, and Ver felt his heart quicken. 6 months ago, he had been the lone human on a hostile planet. Now he stood ready to welcome his own kind to a world that had become, in many ways, his home. First down the ramp came the security detail, standard protocol. Though Ver had assured Earth Center it was unnecessary. They were followed by the diplomatic team, 3 senior negotiators representing Earth's primary political blocs, 2 cultural attachés, and finally, the head of the delegation. Ambassador Helena Varek stepped onto Harlan's soil with measured dignity. In her 60s, her dark skin contrasted with silver-white hair, worn in elaborate braids that signaled her African heritage. Ver had worked with her before on delicate negotiations with the Proxima colonies. Her selection for this mission indicated how seriously Earth was taking these talks. "Ambassador Varek," Ver stepped forward, inclining his head in the Earth greeting before making the more elaborate Zeli Ara gesture of respect with his right hand. "Welcome to Harlan." Her eyes, sharp and evaluating, took in not just him, but the entire assembly, the city beyond, the massive crystal formations that dominated the horizon. "Scout Verret," she acknowledged. "It appears your mission parameters have expanded considerably." There was a hint of dry humor in her tone that Ver appreciated. "Circumstances required adaptation. Ambassador, may I present War Chief Torval, Elder Kishai, and Chief Security Officer Kesha of the Zeli Ara Federation." The introductions proceeded with formal precision, each side carefully observing the other's protocols. Ver watched the human delegation's reactions as they took in the towering blue-skinned figures before them. The initial widening of eyes, the careful control of expression that followed. For most, this was their first direct contact with Zeli Ara, a species previously known only through historical records of conflict and sparse intelligence reports. "We have prepared accommodations that should meet your biological requirements," Torval stated. "And our medical team has worked with Ver to ensure all environmental considerations have been addressed." Ambassador Varek nodded appreciatively. "Your thoughtfulness honors us, War Chief. We come ready to learn and understand, not merely to negotiate terms." It was exactly the right thing to say. Ver watched tension ease fractionally from Torval's massive shoulders. "Then let us proceed to the council chambers," Kishai suggested, "where we may begin the first of many conversations between our peoples." As the procession reorganized for the journey to the central complex, Ver found himself walking alongside Ambassador Varric, with Kesha a few paces behind, close enough to intervene if necessary, distant enough to provide a semblance of privacy. "Your reports were thorough, Scout Verret," Varric said quietly. "But they hardly prepared us for the reality. This civilization is far more advanced than our intelligence suggested." Ver nodded. "The Zeli Ara have been selective about what technologies they develop. Their focus has been on sustainable integration with their environment, rather than expansion or resource extraction. A philosophical difference that contributed to our past conflicts," she observed. "Among many others," Ver agreed, "but also a potential strength in any future alliance. Their approaches complement ours in unexpected ways." Varric studied him with renewed interest. "You've come to admire them." It wasn't a question, but Ver answered anyway. "I've come to understand them." Admiration followed naturally. They walked in silence for several moments, passing under massive crystal arches that sent rainbows dancing across the procession. Ahead, the council chambers rose like a frozen explosion of light, its faceted surfaces capturing and amplifying the harsh Harlan sunlight. "They trust you," Varric observed. "That's evident in how they've positioned you for these talks. Are you still representing Earth's interests, Scout Verret?" The question was inevitable, but its directness still surprised him. "I represent the possibility of cooperation that benefits both sides. Ambassador, my loyalty is to that future, not to any single world's advantage over the other." She considered this, then nodded slowly. "An enlightened position. Uncomfortable for traditionalists on both sides. I imagine." Ver thought of the resistance he'd faced from certain tribal leaders. The whispers that he had gone native, that had undoubtedly reached Earth Center. Growth rarely happens within comfort zones. Ambassador. A smile touched Varric's lips. "Indeed. That's precisely why I requested this assignment." She looked ahead to where Torval and Kishai led the procession. "These are proud people with long memories. How do you suggest we approach the negotiations?" "Directly," Ver said without hesitation. "Transparency reads as strength to the Zeli Ara. Hidden agendas as weakness. They respect adversaries who state their positions clearly, even when those positions conflict with Zeli Ara interests." "And the Crystal Heart? Our scientists are particularly interested in its properties." Ver tensed slightly. "That's sacred ground. Ambassador, technology and spirituality are not separate concepts for the Zeli Ara. Research cooperation is possible, but any suggestion of extraction or external control would end talks immediately." Kesha, though several paces back, had undoubtedly heard this exchange. Ver could feel her attention intensify, though she gave no outward sign. "Understood," Varric said. "We'll proceed with appropriate cultural sensitivity." They had reached the base of the council chambers, where a ceremonial guard stood at attention. The enormous crystal doors, transparent yet somehow imposing, stood open in welcome. "One last question, Scout," Varric said quietly, as they paused before entering. "In your judgment, can we trust these people?" Ver looked past her to where Kesha stood. Her expression, unreadable to most humans, but clear as crystal to him, after months of learning her subtle cues. She was waiting for his answer too. "Trust isn't a state to achieve, Ambassador," he said, loud enough for Kesha to hear clearly. "It's a practice to maintain. They are willing to practice with us, if we are willing to practice with them." Varric's eyes narrowed slightly, evaluating his diplomatic non-answer. Then she smiled. "Well put, Scout Verret. Let's begin practice immediately." They entered the council chambers together, stepping from the harsh Harlan sunlight into the diffuse glow of the crystal structure. Here, in this space where Ver had once stood as prisoner, and later as reluctant advisor, two civilizations would begin the delicate work of redefining their relationship. He caught Kesha's eye as she took her ceremonial position, her cracked crystal spear gleaming in the ambient light. The slight inclination of her head carried approval. His answer had satisfied both sides. A promising beginning. The diplomatic sessions progressed with the careful rhythm of two predators circling, not yet certain if they faced prey, threat, or potential ally. Earth's representatives brought technology proposals, trade frameworks, and mutual defense concepts. The Zeli Ara countered with cultural protection demands, territorial sovereignty guarantees, and ecological preservation requirements. Ver found himself constantly shifting between roles: translator of intent, clarifier of confusion, buffer when tensions flared. The days stretched into weeks. Progress measured in small concessions, tiny expansions of common ground. Between formal sessions, Ver continued his daily training with Kesha. What had begun as her surveillance of a potential threat had evolved into a genuine exchange of skills. She taught him the Zeli Ara fighting arts, emphasizing their philosophical underpinnings. He shared Earth tactical approaches, the integration of technology with natural human capabilities. "Your delegation is growing impatient," Kesha observed one morning as they cooled down after a particularly intense session. The training arena overlooked the diplomatic quarters, where lights had burned late into the night as Earth representatives revised their proposals. They expected faster progress, Ver admitted. Earth diplomacy typically operates on tighter timelines. Kesha made the clicking sound that signified Zeli Ara amusement. "Rushing toward trust only proves its absence. I've tried explaining that." Ver rolled his shoulders, feeling the pleasant ache of muscles pushed to their limits. "Ambassador Varric understands, but she has political pressures from home. As does Torval." Kesha's expression darkened slightly. "Some tribal leaders question whether these talks serve any purpose beyond delaying inevitable conflict." Ver had heard these whispers too. Despite the alliance forged in battle against Krathmore, old fears ran deep. "We need a breakthrough, something tangible both sides can point to as progress." "Perhaps," Kesha hesitated, unusual for her direct nature. "Perhaps it is time to show them the Whispering Caves." Ver looked at her sharply. The cave system was not only a strategic military asset, but a cultural touchstone, featuring prominently in Zeli Ara origin myths. "Are you sure?" "Access has always been restricted, which is precisely why offering it would demonstrate genuine commitment to partnership." She twirled her crystal spear thoughtfully, the crack catching morning light. "Not unlimited access, of course, but perhaps a ceremonial expedition, representatives from both sides journeying together into our sacred past." The proposal was bold, politically risky, and potentially transformative. Exactly what the stalled negotiations needed. "I'll speak with Varric. You approach Torval?" Kesha nodded, her pink eyes gleaming with determination. Tonight, after the formal session, their opportunity came sooner than expected. That afternoon's negotiations hit another impasse over resource development protocols. As frustration mounted on both sides, Ver caught Kesha's eye across the chamber and gave an almost imperceptible nod. She rose from her position, crystal spear in hand, commanding immediate attention through sheer presence. "Honored representatives of Earth." Her voice carried the formal tones of Zeli Ara ceremonial address. "The Federation Council wishes to extend an invitation unprecedented in our relations with off-worlders." The human delegation straightened, suddenly alert. Ambassador Varric's expression remained diplomatic, but Ver could see the spark of interest in her eyes. "For 10,000 cycles of our twin suns, the Whispering Caves have been sacred to our people, repository of our history, sanctuary for our most revered rituals, and yes," she glanced at Ver, "strategic defense installation during times of conflict." Murmurs spread through both delegations. Every human intelligence officer would recognize the military significance of what was being offered. We propose a joint expedition, Kesha continued. 3 days hence. Selected representatives from Earth will join Zeliara guides to explore portions of the cave system never before seen by human eyes. Torval, clearly having been consulted beforehand, rose to add his authority to the invitation. This gesture symbolizes our willingness to build a future based on shared knowledge rather than mutual suspicion. It is not offered lightly. Ambassador Varric stood, executing a flawless Zeliara gesture of respect that Ver had taught her. The Earth delegation is honored by this extraordinary invitation. We recognize its significance and accept with appropriate solemnity. The formalities concluded. The session adjourned with more positive energy than any previous day. As the chambers emptied, Ver found himself approached simultaneously by Varric and Kesha, representatives of his past and present converging. "Quite the dramatic development," Varric said. "I assume you had something to do with this?" "The suggestion was Kesha's," Ver replied honestly. "I merely supported her assessment that the time was right." Kesha made the subtle hand motion that substituted for a human nod. "We both recognize the need for a symbolic act to reinvigorate our shared purpose." Varric studied them both, her diplomatic training evident in her careful neutrality. "The caves hold military significance. Our intelligence reports suggest they connect to all major Zeliara settlements." "They do," Kesha confirmed without hesitation. "They also contain technologies we have protected for generations. By showing you these things, we demonstrate trust that transcends strategic advantage." "Or," Varric suggested mildly, "you demonstrate confidence that we couldn't exploit the knowledge even if we wanted to." Ver tensed, but Kesha's response came with unexpected warmth. "Perhaps both can be true. Ambassador, trust and confidence often walk hand in hand." Varric's expression softened into genuine appreciation. "Well said, Chief Security Officer. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to prepare my team for this opportunity." She departed with a respectful nod to them both. "She is formidable," Kesha observed. "I see why your Earth Center selected her." "She sees more than she reveals," Ver agreed. "Like someone else I know." Kesha made the clicking sound of amusement. "We are not so different. Our kinds, when matched in skill and purpose." She grew serious. "The expedition brings risk. Ver, not all within the Federation support this opening. Nor do all Earth factions favor genuine partnership," he acknowledged. "We'll need to be vigilant. Always." She touched the crack in her crystal spear. "But if we survived Krathmor's forces, we can manage a few diplomats in caves." The preparation for the cave expedition consumed the next 3 days. Torval insisted on elaborate ceremonial elements. Kishai demanded proper spiritual observances, and Earth's scientific contingent pressed for equipment allowances that strained cultural sensitivities. Ver and Kesha found themselves constantly mediating, explaining, adjusting parameters to preserve the expedition's viability. "I'm beginning to think fighting Krathmor was simpler," Ver muttered, as they reviewed the final expedition manifest late into the night before departure. Kesha, reviewing security protocols at his side, made the soft rumbling sound that equated to a human sigh. "Battle has clarity. Diplomacy is all shadows and echoes." Speaking of echoes," Ver tapped the holographic display showing the expedition route. "Are you sure about taking them to the echo chamber? That's revealing a significant strategic location." "It's also our most sacred historical site," she countered. "The place where our ancestors first discovered the crystal technologies that define us. Showing it demonstrates that we view Earth as potential family, not merely convenient allies." Ver studied her in the low light of his quarters. Months ago, this same warrior had slapped him and promised death for his human heritage. Now she advocated for the most extensive cultural exchange in their people's shared history. "You've come a long way from 'that's for being human,'" he observed quietly. Kesha's expression shifted to what he now recognized as thoughtfulness. Perhaps I've simply learned to see beyond species to individual worth. She set down her datapad. Or perhaps I've recognized that our futures are now irrevocably entangled, regardless of our separate pasts. Both sound like progress to me. She touched the crystal fragment hanging from his neck, her gift, symbol of their blood oath. Progress earned through blood and trust, not given freely. The only kind that lasts, Ver agreed. Morning arrived with Harlan's characteristic suddenness, twin suns cresting the horizon simultaneously, transforming the world from cool blue darkness to searing golden light in minutes. The expedition assembled at the western entrance to the cave system, a massive crystal archway carved with Zeli Ara historical records so ancient that even Kishai required translation assistance. The Earth contingent arrived precisely on schedule. Ambassador Varek, 2 scientific specialists, a cultural attaché, and 2 security personnel, whose bearing marked them as more than standard protection. Ver recognized the quiet watchfulness of intelligence operatives, noting that Kesha undoubtedly did as well. The Zeli Ara delegation matched them in number. Kesha as lead guide, 2 tribal elders representing historical knowledge, a crystal technologist, and 2 Hunt tribe warriors whose scarification patterns indicated special cave combat training. Ver would serve as the bridge between groups, formally attached to neither yet essential to both. He wore a hybrid uniform of his own design, Earth environmental controls integrated with Zeli Ara protective elements, symbolizing his unique position. The Whispering Caves extend for over 800 kilometers beneath Harlan's surface. Kesha began the formal briefing. Today's expedition will cover approximately 12 kilometers, including 3 significant chambers. We will be traversing sacred historical ground. Please observe silence when indicated and refrain from touching crystal formations unless specifically invited. Ambassador Varek inclined her head. We understand and will respect all protocols. We are here to learn, not to impose. Kishai had insisted on a traditional blessing before entry. The ancient elder arrived accompanied by acolytes, bearing crystal vessels containing sacred oils. He spoke the ritual words in the old tongue, a language so ancient that most modern Zeli Ara required translation. Ver had studied it diligently during his months on Harlan, recognizing its diplomatic value. He asks the ancestors to clear our paths of deception. Ver translated quietly for Varek's benefit. To open our eyes to truth beyond appearance, and to bind our peoples through shared wisdom, rather than shared fear. Varek's expression remained diplomatic, but Ver caught the flicker of genuine appreciation in her eyes. A worthy prayer for any diplomatic endeavor. The blessing complete. Kesha activated the crystal lock that secured the cave entrance. The massive doors, transparent yet somehow impenetrable, parted silently, revealing the first glimpse of the legendary Whispering Caves. Cool air flowed outward, carrying the distinctive mineral scent that Ver had come to associate with Zeli Ara technology. We begin in the Ancestors' Path, Kesha announced. Please stay within the illuminated walkway. The drop-offs on either side descend over 2 kilometers to underground waterways. They proceeded in reverent silence. Earth personnel visibly awed by the bioluminescent crystals that lined the passage. The formations pulsed gently in blues and greens, responding to the presence of visitors in patterns that seemed almost conscious. The crystals are semi-sentient, the Zeli Ara technologist explained, noting the human's fascination. They respond to biological signatures, distinguishing between Zeli Ara, human, and other life forms. One of the Earth scientists, Dr. Eliza Sundin, activated a scanning device so subtle it resembled jewelry. Remarkable, they're emitting coherent energy patterns, almost like a communication network. That is precisely what they are, Kesha confirmed. In times of conflict, these passages transmit warnings, coordinate defenses, and preserve knowledge that might otherwise be lost. Ver watched the Earth contingent absorb this revelation. The military implications were significant. An organic communication system immune to standard electronic warfare techniques would transform defense strategies. During the Krathmore Uprising, Ver added, these passages allowed us to coordinate counterstrikes that would have been impossible with conventional communications. The expedition continued deeper, descending through narrowing passages that occasionally required them to proceed single file. Ver noted how the Earth security personnel tensed during these constrictions, vulnerable positions from a tactical perspective. Kesha's warriors responded with matching alertness, a silent acknowledgement of shared professional concerns. The first major chamber opened before them with breathtaking suddenness, a vast cathedral of crystal that stretched beyond the range of their lights. Stalactites and stalagmites of living crystal created a forest of luminous pillars, each humming with subtle energy. The Chamber of Voices, Kesha announced. Please remain still and listen. As they stood in silence, the chamber gradually responded to their presence. The crystal's hum shifted frequency, harmonizing into what sounded uncannily like distant voices, speaking in countless, overlapping languages. Are those recordings? Dr. Sundin whispered, her scientific detachment momentarily overwhelmed by wonder. Memory impressions, the Zeli Aura technologist explained. The crystals absorb and preserve emotional resonances from those who pass through. What you hear are emotional imprints spanning thousands of years. Joy, fear, triumph, despair, translated into auditory form. Ambassador Varric stepped forward slightly, her normally composed expression open with genuine amazement. This is extraordinary. A living historical record. More than that, Kesha said. A reminder that all who enter these caves leave something of themselves behind. Nothing is forgotten here. The implicit message was clear. Whatever transpired between their peoples, cooperation or betrayal, would become part of this living record. Ver saw the understanding register in Varric's eyes, a deeper appreciation for what was being shared. They proceeded through two more minor chambers, each showcasing different properties of the crystal technology that form the foundation of Zeli Aura civilization. The Earth scientists grew increasingly animated, recording observations and exchanging theories in hushed tones. The cultural attaché appeared overwhelmed, struggling to contextualize what they were witnessing within existing anthropological frameworks. The final chamber requires special preparation, Kesha announced, as they reached a narrow passage blocked by what appeared to be a solid crystal wall. The echo chamber contains our most concentrated crystal formations. The sensory experience can be disorienting for those not accustomed to it. She distributed small crystal amulets to the Earth contingent. These will help modulate your neurological response. Without them, humans typically experience hallucinations or loss of consciousness. Dr. Sundin examined her amulet with professional interest. Neural buffers? Fascinating. The crystals must emit frequencies that interact differently with human brain patterns. A simplified explanation, but essentially correct. The Zeli Aura technologist confirmed. Your brains process energy differently than ours. These compensate for the disparity. Ver touched his own amulet, one he'd worn since his first authorized visit to the echo chamber months earlier. The experience remains intense even with protection. Focus on your breathing if you feel overwhelmed. Kesha placed her palm against the crystal barrier, which recognized her biological signature, and dissolved, revealing the passage beyond. Once we enter, we must proceed directly to the central platform. Do not stop, regardless of what you may perceive around you. They moved forward in single file, Kesha leading, Ver bringing up the rear to ensure no one strayed. The passage twisted downward in a gentle spiral, each turn bringing stronger pulses of energy that Ver could feel resonating in his chest cavity. Around them, the crystal walls became increasingly transparent, revealing glimpses of what appeared to be other passages, other expeditions, some populated by figures in ancient Zeli-Ara attire, others showing versions of themselves walking the same path from slightly different angles. Temporal echoes, Ver explained, as he noticed the Earth contingent's confusion. The crystals sometimes reflect events across time, past, present, possible futures. Another reason we keep to the center of the path. Ambassador Varick's composure showed its first cracks as a version of herself appeared to walk through a solid wall to their left. Are we seeing actual time distortions or some form of projected illusion? The distinction may be philosophical rather than scientific, Ver replied. The Zeli-Ara view time differently than humans, less linear, more permeable. The passage widened suddenly into the echo chamber itself, a perfect spherical cavity whose dimensions seemed to shift as they observed it. The walls were composed entirely of faceted crystal, each surface reflecting and refracting light in patterns that created the illusion of infinite space. At the center floated a platform of solid crystal, accessible by a narrow bridge that appeared to materialize as they approached. Above the platform hovered what could only be described as a crystalline star, a densely packed formation of crystal shards suspended in midair, rotating slowly around multiple axes simultaneously. The Heart of Whispers, Kesha announced with formal reverence. The first crystal formation discovered by our ancestors, and the source from which all other crystal technologies on Harlan derive. The Earth contingent stood transfixed. Even the security personnel momentarily abandoned their vigilance, overwhelmed by the spectacle before them. This is the true Crystal Heart, Ver explained. What you've seen in the city is a connected node, but this is the original source. Ambassador Varick found her voice first. We are honored beyond words to be shown this place. No human has ever stood here, Kesha confirmed. Until Ver earned that right through blood and sacrifice. The Zeli-Ara technologist stepped onto the central platform, gesturing for the others to join. From here, one can communicate directly with the Crystal Network. Historically, only tribal leaders and technical adepts were permitted this privilege. Dr. Sundin looked to Kesha. May we? Kesha nodded. That is why we have brought you here, to demonstrate not just the technology, but the trust it represents. One by one, they stepped onto the platform. The floating crystal constellation above them responded immediately, its rotation accelerating, light patterns shifting to incorporate the new presences. Place your hands on the central pedestal, the technologist instructed. Open your minds to the impressions that come. Ver had experienced this before, but the sensation remained overwhelming, a rush of images, emotions, and concepts too rapid for conscious processing. He saw glimpses of Harlan's history, felt the desperation of the Zeli-Ara during Earth's colonial period, experienced their resilience and adaptation. The humans reacted with varying degrees of composure. Dr. Sundin gasped, her scientific objectivity temporarily shattered. The cultural attaché wept silently, overwhelmed by the emotional content. Ambassador Varick stood rigid, her diplomatic training providing some buffer against the flood of information. This is how we preserve our truest history, Kesha said softly. Not in records that can be altered or interpretations that can be disputed, but in direct experience passed from generation to generation. After what might have been minutes or hours, time perception became unreliable in the chamber. The connection gradually eased. The Earth contingent stepped back, visibly affected by the experience. Now you understand, Kesha said simply. Ambassador Varick studied her with new eyes. Yes, I believe we do. She straightened her posture with visible effort. No report could have conveyed this. No negotiation could have achieved the understanding we've just gained. That, Ver said, was precisely the point. The return journey passed in contemplative silence. The Earth scientists occasionally whispered observations to each other, but the profound nature of what they'd experienced had muted even professional curiosity. As they approached the cave entrance, returning to the harsh light of Harlan's surface world, Ambassador Varric moved to walk beside Kesha. "Chief Security Officer," she began formally, then shifted to a more personal tone. "You have shown us something today that changes everything. The trust you've demonstrated deserves equal trust in return." Kesha inclined her head. "That is our hope." "When we return to the negotiations," Varric continued, "I am authorized to share certain Earth technologies previously considered classified. Atmospheric modification systems that might make Harlan's surface more hospitable to both our species. Medical advances that could benefit Zeli-Ara physiology. Gestures of equivalent significance," Kesha acknowledged. "The Council will be gratified." They emerged into the searing light of late afternoon, twin suns blazing overhead. The contrast between the subtle energies of the cave system and the harsh reality of Harlan's surface created a moment of shared disorientation that somehow unified the group. Ver watched this final interaction with satisfaction. The expedition had achieved precisely what he and Kesha had hoped. Not just information exchange, but genuine connection. The formal treaty might take weeks more to finalize, but its foundation had been secured today in the depths of the Whispering Caves. As the delegations prepared to separate and return to their respective quarters, Kesha approached Ver with an expression he had learned to recognize as privately significant. "Your next trick has proven effective," she said quietly, referencing his words from their first encounter. Ver smiled. "I told you there would be more than one." Her pink eyes held his gaze. "And how many more do you have planned?" "As many as it takes," he replied, "to build the bridge our peoples need." The following week saw unprecedented progress in the negotiations. The cave expedition had transformed the dynamic. Technical discussions that had previously stalled over mistrust now advanced with collaborative energy. Earth's delegation shared atmospheric modification technology. The Zeli-Ara reciprocated with crystal energy applications. Medical experts from both sides began mapping compatibility between their healing approaches. Ver found himself busier than ever, no longer needed as a cultural buffer, but increasingly valued as an implementation strategist. The theoretical frameworks established in the council chambers required practical application plans, something his unique cross-cultural experience made him uniquely qualified to develop. "The agricultural exchange program will need specialized environmental controls," he explained to a joint working group. "Earth crops won't survive Harlan's radiation levels without protection, and Zeli-Ara nutrient crystals require specific energy wavelengths to propagate in Earth conditions." The teams collaborated with increasing ease, specialists from both sides building on each other's expertise, rather than guarding their knowledge. Ver caught Kesha watching these interactions with satisfaction during her security rotations. "They're beginning to function as a single unit," she observed during a rare quiet moment between sessions. "Thinking beyond species limitations." "Like we learned to," Ver agreed. "Under considerably more stressful circumstances." She made the clicking sound of Zeli-Ara amusement. "Nothing builds trust like shared mortal danger. Fortunately, we've found less lethal methods for everyone else." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication alert. Torval requested their immediate presence in the private council chamber, a space used only for the most sensitive discussions. They arrived to find Ambassador Varric already present, along with Kishai and two senior tribal leaders. The atmosphere carried tension Ver hadn't felt since the Krathmore crisis. "We have received troubling intelligence," Torval began without preamble. "A faction within Earth's military command appears to be operating independently of diplomatic channels." Ver felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. "What kind of operation?" Ambassador Varric's expression was grave. "A stealth reconnaissance team has been detected approaching Harlan's far side. They're using experimental cloaking technology that should have evaded your sensors." "But did not," Kishai noted, his ancient voice carrying unexpected steel. Our crystal network detects intentions as readily as physical presence. I had no knowledge of this mission, Varric stated firmly. It directly contradicts my authorized mandate. Ver studied her, applying all the human micro-expression reading skills he'd refined over years of diplomatic work. She appeared genuinely disturbed by the revelation. I believe you, he said. But that raises more concerns than it resolves. Who has the authority to deploy such resources without your knowledge? Defense Intelligence Command, she replied, after a moment's hesitation. Technically, they operate parallel to diplomatic channels during first contact scenarios, a historical structure I've argued against for years. Their objective? Kesha demanded, her warrior's directness cutting through procedural discussions. Varric hesitated, clearly weighing confidentiality against the need for transparency in this crisis. Based on the team composition and equipment manifest, they're likely targeting the echo chamber. The room went still. Ver felt the weight of historical patterns threatening to reassert themselves. Human exploitation, Zeli-Ara resistance, mutual destruction. How did they learn of it? Torvald demanded. The expedition was limited to your personal team. Our session reports are reviewed by multiple departments, Varric acknowledged. The significance of what we discovered couldn't be concealed from technical analysis. Even with our discretion, Ver saw Kesha's posture shift subtly, her warrior's instincts awakening, calculating defensive options. He needed to prevent this situation from escalating into the very conflict they'd worked so hard to avoid. We have an opportunity here, he said carefully, to demonstrate a new pattern of interaction between our peoples. All eyes turned to him. The traditional response would be for the Zeli-Ara to eliminate the threat, and for Earth to deny responsibility. He continued, but we've established something different these past months. What if instead we collaborate on the response? Kesha's expression shifted from defensive calculation to strategic consideration. What do you propose? A joint intercept team, Ver suggested. Zeli-Ara warriors and Earth security personnel, with Ambassador Varric and yourself as commanding officers. Capture, rather than eliminate the reconnaissance team. Then use the incident to force policy reform rather than trigger diplomatic breakdown. The room fell silent as they considered the unprecedented approach. It would require trust beyond anything yet demonstrated. Zeli-Ara, allowing Earth personnel to participate in defending their most sacred site. Earth, acknowledging and taking responsibility for a covert operation. It would establish a powerful precedent, Varric said slowly, demonstrating that we address threats to either society as threats to both, and position the treaty as the solution to preventing such unauthorized actions in the future, Ver added, rather than allowing this incident to undermine our progress. Torval and Kashai exchanged looks, laden with centuries of tribal wisdom and historical perspective. This approach has merit, Torval acknowledged. If, and this is a significant condition, the ambassador can guarantee her personnel will follow orders even against their own kind. Varric straightened, her diplomatic polish giving way to a more fundamental determination. I can and do make that guarantee. The personnel I brought to Harlan were selected for their commitment to peaceful engagement, not colonial ambition. Then we proceed with Ver's proposal, Kishai declared, his ancient voice carrying the weight of decision. A joint response to a common threat. The operation came together with remarkable efficiency, a testament to how far cooperation had advanced. Kesha assembled an elite team of cave warriors, specialists in the unique environment of the Whispering Caves. Varric contributed her 2 security officers, who revealed themselves to be highly trained counterintelligence operatives, and communications expertise to intercept the reconnaissance team's transmissions. Ver served as tactical coordinator, his knowledge of both human military protocols and Zeli-Ara defensive systems, creating a hybrid approach uniquely suited to the situation. They'll approach through the southern access point, he explained, highlighting the route on a 3-dimensional crystal map. It's the least monitored by conventional security and provides the most direct path to the echo chamber, but also passes through the highest concentration of crystal sentinels, Kesha added, indicating pulsing nodes on the display, which they cannot detect with standard equipment. Their team consists of 6 operatives, Varric contributed. Based on the equipment signatures, their Special Reconnaissance Division, highly trained but focused on information gathering, not direct confrontation. Ver nodded. They'll prioritize mission completion over engagement. If we position our intercept teams here and here, he indicated 2 junctions in the cave system. We can contain them without triggering their combat protocols. The plan required precise timing and flawless coordination between species that had been enemies for generations. Ver watched Zeli Ara warriors and Earth operatives reviewing tactics together, switching between languages, adapting to each other's communication styles. Whatever happened next, this collaboration itself represented a victory for his long-term mission. You appear satisfied, Kesha observed, as they made final preparations near the cave entrance. Despite the circumstances are unfortunate, Ver acknowledged. The response is unprecedented. 6 months ago, this situation would have immediately devolved into armed conflict with diplomatic repercussions lasting decades. And now we plan together to capture rather than kill. Kesha adjusted her crystal spear, the crack catching the light. Evolution, perhaps? For both our species, Ver agreed. They moved into the cave system with practiced efficiency, communication limited to essential tactical updates. The Zeli Ara warriors navigated the complex passages with instinctive certainty. The Earth operatives maintained disciplined formation despite the disorienting effects of the crystal energies. Ver monitored the reconnaissance team's progress through sensor data relayed to his hybrid equipment. They were moving with professional precision, but showed signs of struggling with the cave environment. Their life signs indicated elevated stress responses, and their formation had loosened as they encountered crystal phenomena their training hadn't prepared them for. They're approaching Junction 7, he reported quietly. Experiencing significant sensor interference from the crystal harmonics. Kesha signaled her warriors to take position. Varric's operatives moved to complementary locations, creating a containment formation that would minimize potential conflict. The reconnaissance team appeared around a crystal bend, their stealth gear impressive but insufficient against the natural illumination of the cave system. 6 figures in advanced environmental suits, carrying specialized scanning equipment and light defensive weapons. They froze upon seeing the intercept team, hands moving toward weapons in trained response. Defense Intelligence Command personnel. Kesha's voice carried the formal tones of official challenge. You have entered sovereign Zeli Ara territory without authorization. You are surrounded by a joint Zeli Ara Earth security force. Deactivate your equipment and surrender immediately. The team leader, identifiable by subtle command insignia, assessed the situation with professional calm. His gaze moved from the Zeli Ara warriors to the Earth operatives, clearly recognizing the unprecedented nature of the opposition he faced. This operation is classified under Earth Military Code, Section 7 Alpha, he stated. We do not recognize your authority. Ambassador Varric stepped forward. I am Ambassador Helena Varric, Earth Diplomatic Corps, authorization level Omega-3. This operation contradicts direct executive orders regarding Harlan engagement protocols. She transmitted authentication codes that made the team's equipment chirp in confirmation. Stand down immediately. The team hesitated, caught between conflicting chains of command. Ver recognized the critical moment. This could escalate or resolve based on the next few seconds. Your mission parameters assumed isolated access to Zeli Ara technology, he said, addressing the team leader directly. That scenario no longer exists. Earth and Harlan are establishing formal alliance. Your actions now could either support or undermine humanity's strategic position for generations. The leader studied him, recognition dawning. You're Verret, the scout who went native. The scout who built a bridge, Ver corrected calmly. One that benefits both worlds more than any stolen technology could. A tense silence stretched between them, broken only by the subtle hum of the crystal formations around them. Finally, the leader made a hand signal to his team. They powered down their equipment in synchronized sequence. We'll comply under protest, he stated formally, and request direct communication with Earth Command. Granted, Varric confirmed. After debriefing with the Joint Security Council, the containment had succeeded without violence, a small miracle given the historical context. As the reconnaissance team was escorted back toward the surface, Ver caught Kesha's eye across the passage. Her slight nod carried volumes of shared understanding. Another crisis navigated, another precedent established for cooperation rather than conflict. They sent their best, she observed quietly, as they followed the procession. It would be foolish to think they won't try again through other means. Undoubtedly, Ver agreed. Which is why the formal treaty has become even more essential. It must include protocols for shared security, technology exchange frameworks, and conflict resolution mechanisms specifically designed to prevent unilateral actions. The very elements we've been negotiating for weeks, she noted with grim amusement. Sometimes theory requires practical demonstration to become convincing, Ver replied. The incident catalyzed the final phase of treaty negotiations. What might have derailed the entire process instead accelerated it, providing concrete evidence of the risks inherent in undefined relationships between their worlds. 3 weeks later, Ver stood on the ceremonial platform, overlooking Crystal Canyon's central plaza, as Torval and Ambassador Varric signed the historic accord that would forever change relations between Earth and Harlan. The document, inscribed on both paper and crystal in a symbolic gesture of cultural respect, established frameworks for technology exchange, environmental cooperation, defense coordination, and cultural preservation. Today marks not an ending, but a beginning. Torval's amplified voice carried across the assembled crowd of Zeliara citizens and Earth representatives. We have moved beyond the shadows of our shared past into the light of a common future. Ambassador Varric's response carried equal gravity. Earth acknowledges the sovereign integrity of Harlan and the Zeliara Federation. We commit ourselves not to exploitation, but to partnership, recognizing that our differences create strength when united in common purpose. The formal ceremony continued with ritual elements from both cultures. Earth's tradition of witnessed signatures, Zeliara's crystal bond ceremony, Ver observed from his position of honor, alongside Kesha and other architects of the agreement. Your expression suggests deeper thoughts than diplomatic satisfaction, Kesha noted quietly. Ver smiled slightly. I'm remembering our first meeting, your slap, my promise of another trick. How impossible this moment would have seemed then. Not impossible, she corrected. Merely requiring the right sequence of actions to achieve? Is that how you see what's happened, a tactical sequence? Her pink eyes held unexpected warmth. A journey, perhaps, one neither of us could have navigated alone. Below them, the ceremony concluded with a symbolic joining of Earth technology and Harlan crystal, a demonstration of the hybrid energy systems they would develop together. The crowd's reaction transcended formal approval, carrying genuine hope for the future being created before them. There will be challenges, Ver acknowledged. Resistance from traditionalists on both sides, attempts to undermine or exploit the agreement, misunderstandings born of our different perspectives. Of course, Kesha agreed. That is the nature of all worthwhile endeavors. But for now, Ver watched as the first official exchange teams began to form below. Scientists, cultural specialists, and security personnel from both worlds, preparing to begin the practical work of implementation. We've created a foundation that can withstand those challenges. Your final trick? She asked. a hint of their long-standing exchange in her tone. Ver shook his head. No, this isn't an ending. As Torval said, it's a beginning. Kesha touched the crystal fragment hanging from her neck, the matching piece to the one she had given him, both halves of a whole. Then I look forward to what comes next. Ver of Earth and Harlan. As do I, Kesha of Harlan and Earth. Together, they watch the twin sons of Harlan begin their descent toward the crystal horizon, casting long shadows that seem to reach toward each other across the plaza below, separate in origin but increasingly indistinguishable as they stretch toward a common future. The crystal spear that had once symbolized division now stood planted between their worlds as a marker of connection. Its crack, no longer a flaw, but a reminder of how strength could emerge from vulnerability when met with understanding rather than exploitation. Ver touched his hand to the spear briefly, feeling the resonance of everything it represented. That's for being human, he whispered, echoing Kesha's words from what felt like a lifetime ago. And somewhere in the crystalline heart of Harlan, the echo answered back, then you'll love what comes next. The journey continued,